Top 30 receivers heading into Week 11 rankings. The first guy is Deandre Hopkins, the Arizona Cardinals. What a catch we saw Hopkins have to end the game versus Buffalo last week, in between three defenders on a crazy Hail Mary throw by Kyler Murray. And this week he's got the matchups of all matchups is Hopkins versus the Seattle Seahawks tonight. And the Seahawks, they give up the most fantasy points to wide receivers. I know in the first meeting, Hopkins, he didn't go that off, but I think tonight, after that catch, the momentum's going. This team's running red hot, and I could see Hopkins shred this Seattle defense for 150 yards and a touchdown or two. The second guy's Davante Adams of the Green Bay Packers. I know it's a tough matchup versus a good Indianapolis Colts defense that gives up the fourth least fantasy points to wide receivers. But Adams, this guy's a play no matter who he versus. Each and every week, he's putting up good fantasy points, is Davante Adams. I know the ankle's banged up a little, but I think he'll be fine. Adams is going to get his targets. He's going to get his points. Every week, he's in the end zone, it seems, and I don't expect anything less this week for Davante Adams. So he's number 2. Number 3, Keenan Allen of the Los Angeles Chargers. Him and Herbert, they've been on the same page since Herbert's been the starter from week 2 on, and Allen, he's been a top 10 receiver this season in fantasy football now since Herbert's been inserted. Herbert looks for him. The Chargers, they've been down and trailing in many games. This game versus the Jets, it might be a blowout early or it might be close, but anyway, the Jets, they're a dream matchup as well, just like Seattle is, and the Jets, they give up a bunch of fantasy points to receivers. Herbert, he's going to have his way. Keenan Allen, they got no one in the secondary that could cover him. So I think Keenan Allen has a big game where we could see a 12 to 15 catch game from Allen with 100+ yards in this one. The next guy, number 4, Tyreek Hill. The cheetah is loose. He's having a great season, under the radar as well. But Hill, he's had a great fantasy season. Only one game in single-digit fantasy points. And this week he gets the Las Vegas Raiders, where a lot of teams are throwing and receivers are making a lot of plays. This week, I could see Hill getting a deep ball or two in this revenge game versus the Raiders. Plus, it's indoors, a faster track for the speedster Hill. Hill, I could see him go for anywhere 140, 150 yards and a touchdown or two. You know, Mahomes and the Chiefs, they're mad after the Raiders beat them a few weeks ago and dancing around the stadium. So it's a payback game here for Hill and the Chiefs, and I expect them to have a top 5 performance. Number 5, Julio Jones. Jones coming off the bye week for the Atlanta Falcons, but Jones, he's having a great season this year. He had a little hamstring injury early in the season, but he's over that. Now another week healthy. Now he's got a great matchup versus a New Orleans team that he always puts in work, is Jones, and puts up numbers, and I'm not expecting anything less, again, from Julio Jones this week. He's going to have a top 5 day. He's going to make his catches. He's going to score a touchdown, I think, in this one. This game's going to be up and down shootout. Even though I know the Falcons are out of it, they're still going to fight for pride, and they're going to fight to win the game. Because if you're not going to try to win, what's the point of playing? So the Julio Jones, I think he'll get 100 yards, possibly a touchdown in this one. Number 6, DK Metcalf for the Seattle Seahawks. We saw him a few weeks ago with Patrick Peterson on him versus Arizona, not do much. His highlight of that game was chasing Buda Baker down 90 yards down the field to stop him from getting a pick 6. But anyway, Metcalf, he's going to have a tough matchup. But this guy, he's matchup proof as well. I cannot bench him. He's a top 10 option each and every week. This guy's physical attributes, he's like a Calvin Johnson in my opinion. And the scary thing, it's only his second year. He's with one of the best quarterbacks in football throwing to him. It's Russell Wilson. So Metcalf, he'll be fine. I think he'll get it going this week. And I could see him tonight going for 60, 70 yards and a touchdown in this one. Number 7, Michael Thomas of the New Orleans Saints. Thomas, he's been a disappointment the whole fantasy season. At least now he's been back on the field the last 2 weeks. But now Jameis Winston in at quarterback. I don't know if he'll help or hurt him. Because Drew Brees, let's be honest, his arm strength was going down. Thomas in his first 2 games back now with 10 fantasy points and 470. But this week, he versus Atlanta Falcon team that gives up the 3rd most fantasy points to wide receivers. So Thomas, I'm still going to have confidence in him. But if he has a bad game one more time here this week, then he's going to drop down in these weekly rankings. But right now I got him 7 because a matchup, and I think Winston can get him the football in this game. So the next guy, number 8, Tyreek Rockett, he's a game-time decision here tonight. But if he plays, expect him to cook. We saw him last time versus Arizona a few weeks ago. 15 catches, 200 yards, and 3 touchdowns. He exploded for 52 fantasy points. Was Tyler Lockett. And like I said, Peterson's probably going to be on Metcalf. And Lockett's going to have one-on-one coverage most of the night, even if he's 100% or not. If he plays, I think he's going to go for 100 yards and a touchdown in this shootout. Next guy, Scary Terry McLaurin of the Washington football team. He's got the Cincinnati Bengals coming to town this week. McLaurin, he looked great last week versus the Detroit Lions, where he had 117 yards receiving in that one. He's one of the best route runners in football, and now he's got a pretty plus matchup versus a mediocre Cincinnati defense at best. So I like McLaurin's chances of finding the end zone in this one and putting in a good game. Number 10, Calvin Ridley versus the New Orleans Saints. It looks like Ridley's going to return. We're not 100% sure, but now he's had a few weeks off since hurting the ankle on Thursday Night Football versus the Panthers. Ridley now, he'll be back. It'll be a quick track in New Orleans in this one. It's going to be a shootout. Ridley, he's been a top 5 receiver when he played this season, and I think he's going to have a good game in this one is Ridley. Him and Julio, they're both going to get their catches and yards in this game, so I got him at 10. Number 11, Justin Jefferson. He finally exploded once again back on the scene for 8 catches, 135 yards last week for the Minnesota Vikings versus the Bears on Monday Night Football, and now he's got a great matchup versus the Dallas Cowboys that teams are having their way against, especially receivers. It seems like every week a receiver is going for 100 yards plus and a touchdown or 2 versus this Cowboy defense. I think Justin Jefferson, he's going to do the same. I could see him easily crack 100 yards and possibly score in this one. The next guy is his teammate, Adam Thielen, at number 12. Thielen, he finally had a big game, 4 catches, 43 yards, and 2 touchdowns. The only thing concerning with Thielen is the yards aren't there anymore, it seems like. He hasn't cracked 50 yards in 4 or 5 weeks now, is Adam Thielen, but he's still getting the red zone looks. He's in a great offense with Cook, Jefferson, Kirk Cousins. He's looking good so far now the last few weeks, and plus the matchup's great, so I think Thielen, he could get 50 yards and a touchdown in this one. Number 13, JuJu Smith-Schuster. He's been climbing up the ranks the last few weeks after having a couple dud performances a few weeks before that, but JuJu Smith-Schuster now, he's got a great matchup versus a weak Jacksonville Jaguar defense, and I think he's going to find the end zone in this one. Him and Ben are back on the same page. The Steeler offense is a powerhouse, and guys are getting open left and right, so I think JuJu's going to have a good one in sunny Jacksonville this weekend. Number 14, Kenny Golladay. It looks like he's going to play. He practiced in full on Wednesday, and now he's got the Carolina Panthers, a team that gives up a lot of decent yards to wide receivers. We know Matthew Stafford, he needs Golladay back in a way right here this week. We know Marvin Jones, he's been playing decent at the number 1 there. But Kenny Golladay, this guy, when he plays, he puts up numbers. He puts up stats. It seems like he gets over 100 yards a lot when he plays. And he's a matchup mismatch for most corners. And this week, if he does play versus Carolina, I'm going to expect a good game out of Kenny Golladay. Number 15, another Pittsburgh Steeler, Deontay Johnson. He's got a great matchup at Jacksonville. I've been down on him most of the season, but he's proven me wrong now. The last 2 weeks is Johnson. The targets are still high, the touchdowns are there, and the PPR points are there. Johnson this week versus Jacksonville, he could have anywhere from 15 to 20 in this one. He's the most reliable guy in the Steelers' offense in terms of getting open and getting targets. And Johnson, I think this week he has a big ball game, so I like him at number 15. Number 16 is Robbie Anderson of the Carolina Panthers. Arguably the Panthers' best and most consistent receiver the whole season for Anderson. And now he's got a good matchup versus a Detroit team that we see get shredded in the air each and every week, it seems like. Anderson and Teddy Bridgewater have built a good rapport. Even if P.J. Walker does start, because Bridgewater is banged up, I like Robbie either way. He's getting open. He's not just a deep threat guy anymore. He works the middle of the field, a couple comeback routes. he does and stuff. So Anderson, I like his output. I like what he's going to do. In 11 games this year, he scored double-digit fantasy points in 9 of them. So Robbie Anderson, he's playing well. He's going to get open in this one, and I think he could go for 7 or 8 catches and 60-plus yards. Number 17's Chris Godwin of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Godwin, he came back a few weeks ago with the finger, and he's going to be the most consistent Tampa Bay receiver in this offense, I believe, is Chris Godwin. Brady trusts him. He's the best route runner by far on this team. Antonio Brown, with his troubles now, who knows how much longer he'll be on the team. So Chris Godwin, he's still getting his points. He's getting open, and he's getting the targets. And this week versus the Rams, I think Ramsey's going to cover Mike Evans. So I like Godwin having a better game in this one as well. And with single coverage doing some damage. Number 18, Will Fuller of the Houston Texans. He's versing the Pats this week, and this is why he's very low on my list. If he didn't have a top corner like Stephen Gilmore on him, this guy's a top 10 option pretty much each and every week, even though last week he only had 8 fantasy points, was Will Fuller, because of the weather, I think. But Fuller, he'll be fine after this game. He could still put a touchdown up in this one. I wouldn't be surprised. But Stephen Gilmore's a great corner. He's a tough guy to get open on. And Fuller, he's a deep ball threat. So it only takes one for him to have a day. But just this week, I'm going to lower my expectations for him with Stephen Gilmore on him. Number 19, another Pittsburgh Steeler here, is Chase Claypool, the rookie sensation. It seems like each and every week this guy has a touchdown. And since that 4-touchdown game, he's been in the offense full time, is Claypool. This guy's got physical attributes. He's quick. He's a matchup nightmare for corners. He just finds a way to get open. Ben looks for him, and he gets him open. So Chase Claypool, I think he's going to find the end zone again here this week. Even if the yards aren't there every week, he's getting the targets. And it seems like every week he's getting the touchdown. So Chase Claypool's number 19. Number 20, Mike Evans. Like I mentioned before with Godwin, Evans is going to have Ramsey on him. But Mike Evans, every week Brady's targeting him in the end zone. Evans and Brady last week, they looked like they were finally on the same page. This week it's going to be a tough matchup with Ramsey on him, but I still think Evans can find a way to be a number 2 to flex receiver in fantasy points in this week. So I got him at 20. Number 21, the impressive rookie T. Higgins at the Washington Redskins this week. He has Higgins once again, another 100-yard game and a touchdown last week in a tough matchup versus Pittsburgh. Him and Burrow, each and every week they were improving and making plays, and I think Higgins is the number 1 over there now. A.J. Green, he hasn't been a factor for weeks or most of the season, and Tyler Boyd, he's more the underneath and route running receiver over there, so it's a nice 1-2 combo, Higgins and Boyd. But this week I think Higgins is going to find the end zone and have another great fantasy game versus the Washington football team, so plug him in there. Number 22, A.J. Brown. Brown, he finally didn't score a touchdown last week, which was a disappointment. He dropped the ball that probably would have been a touchdown going down the sidelines, because he had the corner beat. He would have been gone for 60 yards. And this week he's got a tough matchup versus the Baltimore Ravens, who give up the 4th least fantasy points to wide receivers. But Brown, he's an every week starter, I still think. Just because he had one down game, this guy, he gives corners a lot of problems. He gets open a lot. He's a physical and big receiver, and I think he'll bounce back with a decent game this week. But I got him low in the rankings because of the matchup and the play of Tannehill declining over the last few weeks. Number 23, Tyler Boyd at the Washington football team. Boyd, great receiver, especially in PPR. It seems like he gets 6 or 7 catches each and every week. This game versus Washington could be a mini shootout if the weather holds up, because this time of year it gets cold and rainy over there in Washington. But anyway, I think Boyd, he could have a good game. He could get open. He runs routes crisp. Him and Burrow got a good rapport. And it's Boyd and Higgins. No one else really in that offense is catching the ball much. So I think Tyler Boyd, the workload will be there. It's just, will he get a touchdown or not? Number 24, Cooper Kupp at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This is a tough matchup for the Rams. Kupp last week in a plus matchup versus Seattle, he had a great game. But it's going to be tough this week. The Rams got to verse Tampa, Monday Night Football. Tampa gives up the second least amount of fantasy points to wide receivers. And Jared Goff and his receivers, they're just not hitting in the end zone. Goff last week, he did throw for over 300 yards, but this week it's going to be tougher. And the problem with these guys, they don't score touchdowns, it seems like, is this Rams. It seems like the running backs, Henderson and Brown, are getting all that close touchdown work, and the receivers just aren't getting it. So Kupp's 24, and his teammate Robert Woods, I got at 25. Same issue with him. It's a tough matchup Monday night. Woods, great PPR receiver, even though last week he had a down game in a matchup where I thought he would have a huge game, but he didn't. So Woods, I could expect him to get 7 catches, 60 yards, something along those lines. So that's number 2 to flex production from Woods. So he's 25. Number 26, Amari Cooper of the Dallas Cowboys. Cooper, honestly, with DiNucci and Gilbert, he's only had one horrible game. In PPR, he still had 12.5 week 9 versus Pittsburgh with Garrett Gilbert in there. But good news this week, Andy Dalton, he's back in the lineup. He's more serviceable than Gilbert and DiNucci, obviously. So I think Cooper, he could get open. The Minnesota Vikings give up the 5th most fantasy points to wide receivers, and Cooper, I had him on my start list this week. But the only problem with him, it's just going to be Cooper, is Dalton going to get on the ball, or is he going to get hurt again and they got to go to the backups? But Cooper, I think he could at least safely get you 10 fantasy points, and if he gets a touchdown with that, it could be 16 to 18. So he's 26. Number 27 is DJ Moore. He's inconsistent. Now we don't know if Bridgewater is going to start or not. But anyway, Moore, he had a good game finally last week with 4 catches, 96 yards, and a touchdown versus Tampa Bay. This week he's got even a little lighter of a matchup versus the Detroit Lions. But Moore, I don't know if I could trust him. But this week I'm starting him in a league at my flex. You just got to roll him out there and hope he makes a big play or two. And that's what his fantasy points have come down to, making a big touchdown play or not. And this week, I think he could do it versus Detroit, but I'm not going to rank him high because he's just so inconsistent. Number 28, it's Brandon Cooks of the Houston Texans. This week, he gets one of his former teams coming into town, the New England Patriots. Like I said, Stephen Gilmore is going to be shadowing Will Fuller the whole game, and Cooks, he should have one-on-one coverage on the outside in this one. And I think Cooks, he could find the end zone in this game, but this New England team, they got confidence now. They're playing tough. We saw Perriman 2 weeks ago go over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns on him. Cooks could do something like that, but I doubt it. Cooks, we're hoping he gets 50, 60 yards and a touchdown in this one. Number 29, Christian Kirk of the Arizona Cardinals. Last week he put in a dud performance versus the Buffalo Bills. But once again, he's got a great matchup versus Seattle Seahawks tonight, who give up the 1st most fantasy points to wide receivers. And a few weeks ago in their game on Sunday Night Football in Arizona, we saw Christian Kirk catch a deep ball for a touchdown and then have an end around for one also. So Christian Kirk, the volume's there, the matchup's there, and I think he could find the end zone once again here tonight versus Seattle. And the 30th and final guy in the rankings, Jacoby Myers. He's been a find for this New England team. He's been on the roster now 2 or 3 years, but now he finally got the opportunity to shine. His Myers, with injuries to Julian Edelman and N'Keal Harry, and this guy, New England, they're not going to take him out of the lineup. After that monster game versus the Jets on Monday night a few weeks ago with 169 yards and a touchdown, and then last week throwing a touchdown to Burkhead versus Baltimore with some trickery. This guy's pretty reliable, and this week he's got a great matchup in Houston, indoors. Houston gives up a lot of fantasy points to receivers, and he's going to have a fast track and good weather. So Jacoby Myers, I rank him number 30 here, and that's the top 30 receivers I'm ranking for Week 11.